Very good morning to you, ladies and gentlemen, from Mumbai, the financial capital of India, and a top of the morning to you, ladies and gentlemen, in Vienna, the most livable city in the world. As they say in German, Guten Morgen, and this is something that I've learned from the gentlemen who are present today, our esteemed panelists who are from the city of Mozart and Freud and Arnold, I believe. Let me introduce our esteemed panelists to you before we begin this unique conversation. And I'm calling this conversation unique because this is the first time uh, on this talk series and perhaps in the history of uh, business journalism, YouTubing, if I can put it that way, that a media person from India is able to talk to uh, international representatives. So this is a unique edition of Makers and Movers. Our panelists are Clemens Kirner, founder and owner of INS Insider Navigation Systems GmbH. The other esteemed panelist is Oliver Lorenz. He is the president and CEO of SHANXAGENCY EU. Clemens Kirner is founder and owner of INS Insider Navigation Systems GmbH, which was established in 2014 in Vienna, but acting globally as a specialist of hardware-free, centimeter-precise augmented reality indoor navigation and indoor experience without the need of extra infrastructure like GPS and beacons. Further, INS Insider Navigation Systems GmbH is a specialist in augmented reality visualization of company data coming from existing CRM, ERP, and other information management systems to visualize real-time data in a live camera captured environment. Insider navigation solution can be used to optimize routes in large-scale factories, venues, airports, etc., but can also be used for the visualization of BIM systems, building information management, order picking, logistics, etc. Previously, Mr. Kirner was the founder and the owner of the company Innovation.Rocks Consulting GmbH, which was established in 2003 in Vienna with branch offices in Munich, Shanghai, and Hong Kong. In 2017, Clemens sold Innovation.Rocks to a private equity successfully and focuses now solely on INS. Mr. Kirner holds lectures at the New York University, Technical University of Vienna, and is a regular speaker and exhibitor at important trade fairs and marketing events worldwide, from AWE in Santa Clara, USA, to Euroforum in Cologne, Germany, or Hanover Fair, one of the largest industry events globally. The second panelist, Mr. Lorenz, just founded SHANXAGENCY E.U. and acts as its president and CEO. SHANXAGENCY specializes in helping European-based manufacturing SMEs to find the fitting marketing and advertising partner in Asia and will, as a next step, help Asian manufacturing SMEs to find the fitting marketing and advertising partner in Europe. Through his extensive experience of almost 15 years in various senior management roles in the B2B marketing and advertising industry in Asia, Oliver has the ability to carefully brief, select, and train advertising agencies to the level that each manufacturing company expects their agencies to act. Previously, Oliver was working as the CEO Asia of Montfort Advertising. This is it. A leading Europe-based, globally acting B2B marketing and advertising agency. He fulfilled this role for almost 15 years and helped brands like DMG Mori, Coca, TLD, Voice Paper, and many others to strengthen their brand and promote their products in Asia. In addition, he acted as board director of Montfort Advertising's Tokyo office. Beside his role as CEO Asia at Montfort Advertising, Oliver acted as the head of marketing Asia of OrderFox, a leading globally acting marketplace for the CNC industry, where he increased his know-how about the challenges and opportunities in the manufacturing industries of Asia. It's a real pleasure to have you, gentlemen, and particularly as folks. I welcome all the attendees as well. There are more of the registrants joining us from different parts of the country, and it's a special pleasure at today's day in challenging times to be able to connect to our European peers without any passport and visa. Great welcome to you, both gentlemen. Let's start with Clemens. Clemens, can you tell us more about your work, the technologies that you deal with, and your business experience overall?
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. And as you've said, it's really nice to have a cross-country multinational talk without any visa. Just right now, we're having clients from all over the world and where we would need to fly to. And at the moment, you can't go anywhere, not even to Germany when you are sitting in Austria, which is just close to us, without the need for quarantine. I mean, it's getting better in Europe, but it's really, really crazy. And so talks like this are really a very positive, I guess, outlook where we hopefully soon can interact with each other soon again. Coming back to what we are doing, as you've said in your intro, I founded my first company in 2003, and it was a little bit like a consultancy company for new technologies and implementation companies. So we already started very soon with augmented reality, computer deep learning in 2008 and computer deep learning in 2012. So, but we were more on the consultancy side. We started in Vienna, then Munich, and then Shanghai and Hong Kong, focusing on the new technologies. And we've seen that the issues that we had in these days was that we were using third-party technologies, and then a lot of our technologies that we were using, especially in augmented reality, got acquired by companies like Apple. So this was the reason why we then realized, look, we are in Vienna, and Vienna is, I didn't know that before, to be fair, one of the best companies to do research in computer vision. So we got at least 5 research institutes with around 10,000 researchers focusing on computer vision. And so we started a lot of projects on our own due to that all our suppliers got acquired by Apple, Facebook, Google, and so on. And one of the projects that we started already in 2012 with the Technical University, so quite long ago already for technical terms, was can you just use the camera of any device, smartphone, computer, to position yourself in a building? Because we realize in these former days, GPS is not working in buildings. So that's something that's still valid today. You got beacons or ultra wideband, but that all involves putting in a lot of hardware and investing a lot of money into a building that you know where you are. And so we said, hey, normally before we worked for Volkswagen, that you can look at the car and you can change colors and rims. Why not turning it around and you position yourself in a large object? And so in 2012, we thought we will be the leading company for indoor positioning and navigation for shopping malls and airports. Till now, we have no shopping mall and no airport, but we are focusing on industrial clients. And this is, I guess, why I really look forward to the talk and the questions afterwards, because what we realized is that due to that we are precise within 1 to 5 centimeters where you are, but we also exactly know where you are looking at. So the 6 dimensions of freedom, where you are, we are looking at rotation, angle, and so on. We can connect any kind of physical building with the right digital data. And as you know by now today, due to trends like IoT, 5G, you have more data, more capacities and availability of bandwidth. And so what we are doing is, in general, we can merge any kind of physical environment with any kind of digital data coming out from SAP, Oracle, IoT platforms, whatever is needed. And by this, we have seen that normally, before you go to B2C, the leading innovators are normally always the B2B area, especially as we see it from our side, normally starting with automotive, then oil and gas, and so on, moving on forwards through the whole chain. And what we are doing from our side is we are having a platform, and we are working through local integrators, because we have seen an automotive client in Mexico has a different demand than a chemical factory in Thailand. So you have a different language barriers, you have APIs, you need a local knowledge, how people are behaving, interacting with technologies. And so what we've done the last years is we found partners all over the world, from New Zealand to Mexico to the US, and now also soon in Brazil. And we thought, hey, we are really on the safe side, right? We are working in a lot of different industries, from food packaging, oil and gas, automotive, and as mentioned, from New Zealand to Mexico, UAE, Netherlands, Germany. So we thought we are really on the safe side, and that you then have a crisis that really somehow makes it work, that at the moment everything is in a shutdown and everything is on hold. After 18 years now of being self-employed, that's something I haven't expected, to be fair. So that's why I really very much look forward to the next hour and the talks that we're having together.
Thank you, Clemens. One additional question is that how can your technology, your platform with augmented reality help companies function, or manufacturing plants function in these times when they are partially open, especially in India, when they are partially opening up, to manufacturing activities as well as customers and dealers and distributors?
As far as we have seen now, at the moment, we differentiate between, let's say, two different groups, right? As far as we can see. They are the system critical companies producing food packaging, and so on, or electricity. And they are running at the moment in the countries that we are talking to them. Normally, when you have 100%, they are running on 150% of their capacity, because they have to produce and to produce because of the requirements. And on the other hand side, they are running on 75-50% of the human resources that they are normally having. People are getting ill. Due to social distancing, only half of the people are allowed to work, or stuff like this. And what we can see is that with that large scale AR platform that we are having, we can help that we standardize processes. As an example, for maintenance, we have a process that we know where are certain people, where are certain objects, and these objects need to be controlled all the time. Like, is enough oil there? Is the dustbin emptied? Otherwise, the production will stop. And what we can do is that when people are getting ill, or even worse, and then you have non-qualified people which have to fulfill certain tasks, so that we can ensure that the business continuity is established. We can, with augmented reality, guide them on the right spots, give them the right checklist, and ensure that these people are at the right time, at the right spot, check the right things. And so we can really see that people are enabled within the first seconds, and they can ensure the business continuity of the factory. And to be fair, for system critical companies, this is very valid right now, and they have immediately used the technologies. On the other hand side, companies going back to business after a shutdown, as you've heard, I guess, also from Volkswagen, right? They shut down for 6 weeks because they were not allowed to sell cars, or were not able to ship them. And now they opened up, and they've seen that, for instance, sales dropped by 70%, and now they are closing down the factories again. And if you do something like this, you have to be very efficient. And I guess this is also where we can help with augmented reality. You have a very cheap solution with a very low entrance burden. So it's a very easy installation, and you have very quickly a high return of investment. I guess this is what you need right now, right? Having easy, scalable solutions without the need of high hardware involvement, and being able to scale in a few days for a quick return of investment. And we have, for instance, a client in Mexico which invests in license $250,000 and has savings of $36 million a year. And this is what we are talking about right now, right? On the one hand side, see that system critical companies are running, and on the other hand side, companies opening up under certain circumstances, see that we help them to reduce the costs and ensure that still everything is running. And yeah, I think this is the positive thing right now in that crisis. I don't know where I read this, but the biggest, the highest speed from digital transformation is not coming at the moment from the CFO, the CEO, or the CIO, but it's coming from the crisis, because people now realize we need to transform, otherwise we are dying.
That's absolutely. That's among the most popular ideas nowadays. You are so right, Clemens. So right. And experts and even historians are saying this that so many things are changing so fast in this critical situation. And this is where your technology, augmented reality, which was confined to certain areas of implementation or digitalization, has suddenly become even more important in today's times. I totally agree with you. Oliver,
Yes.
big warm hello to you in Vienna. How's everything over there? And plus, let's just first know your work, more about your work, what you do, and your experience.
Well, first of all, good morning to everyone as well from my side. It's a rainy morning in Vienna, but we're looking forward to better weather again the next few days. I hope everything is well in India. I haven't been there in a while now. To be fair, in 18 months, I haven't been in India, but I'm looking definitely forward when travel restrictions are lifted again to be there also physically. But as also Clemens and you mentioned it out before, it's a great pleasure to be now virtually connected with our colleagues here in India. And I really look very much forward to a constructive session now for the next minutes. To give you a little bit of a background, what I'm doing, I just founded SHANXAGENCY a month ago, because out of my 20 years in the advertising industry and always in the B2B advertising industry, having many manufacturing clients all across the world. Through my early career, I've helped them in the North American area, and then the last 15 years in Asia, be it in China, in India, Southeast Asia area, where I did marketing campaigns, market entries, exhibitions, websites, direct mailings in the local markets, in the local languages. I just saw the need that very often the client agency relationship is not ideal. So it might come that an agency gets the order by the client, but actually the chemics don't fit, or the agency is too small to handle the client, or the agency is even too big to handle the client. And especially this is an issue for SMEs. And when European manufacturing SMEs try to find the right agency, they go online and find this long, extensive list of agencies. And look at Shanghai, you got like 3,000 advertising agencies that are active in business. You look at Mumbai, you look at Bangalore, there are agencies blooming up, especially in the digital area. So where to start? How do I find the right one? So I said to myself, there is a need to help, from my agency background, help manufacturing SMEs that I've worked with in the past or will work in the future, to help the agency that really not only fits their demands from an ability, from a capability point of view, but also from the culture point of view, from the background, from the social skills point of view. Is that the right agency that fits to you as an SME based in Europe? And especially now with the crisis, I thought it's a good timing, because many of those European SMEs have a subsidiary in India, have a subsidiary in China, maybe a small factory, maybe a sales office. And now they're like, okay, we managed the crisis in Europe. We have to get over with in Germany. We have to get over with in Austria. And now finally things are opening up here. But what's happening with the overseas subsidiary? What's happening with that? We're stuck there. The factory has been closed down. And now is there a reopening time, yes or no? And how can we do that? So to do that, it's important that now is the time where you say we can do the homework. We can look at the brand, we can look at the marketing strategy, we can look at the activities. But for that, you need to find the right agency in your target market. It's very hard, especially now with the restriction, to use a European agency to help you promote your brand and your products in China or in Singapore, in India, because now you can't even go there. So an agency can never find out from Europe what's the actual demand there. So that's why I decided to really use my longtime Asia experience to take Asian agencies that know how to work with European clients and select them and help them to connect with potential clients in Europe. As a second step, of course, I want to help Indian companies as well who want to promote their brand and product in Europe to find the right agency in Europe, which is also a challenge because the same thing is around when a Chinese company, an Indian company, especially when you think of a Mumbai manufacturing company or Pune manufacturing company goes online, I need an agency in Germany. There's countless B2B agencies in Germany who are all very good agencies, very capable agencies, but is the agency the right one fitting for me, according to my demand, to my company size, to my targets? And that's what I like to extend, of course, here to the Indian colleagues as well. So if there's anyone here who wants to promote his brand or products in Europe, I'll definitely can help you find the right agency there as well.
Thank you for that elaborate and detailed insight. Oliver, you have a vast experience, and you also work with China partners, as is also obvious from the name of the agency, perhaps. What is the name? What is the meaning of the name of your company?
Well, it was a mixture between I used obviously my Shanghai past on it, but it also goes at the word game as a chance. And
Okay.
And sometimes we say also like Asia is a chance, and I used with the Shanghai past because that's where my real core competence is, of course. And then I kind of like there's a saying in German like when you try your own business, stay in the area that you're good in, know what you're good in, know your home ground, and that's why I decided to with that name. But believe me, Anand, it took me 3 weeks to decide.
No, that's very wise. I must say you've come to the right decision because words of wisdom that carry through years and centuries, they really hold deep meaning. So I completely agree with you. To stay, one needs to stay with one's core competence and then branch out or become bigger. And I feel likewise. We'd be very interested in India. And the whole reason why I was even more excited about this talk was that thus far we've been having an insider's perspective, which is very needed in India. It being such a vibrant and noisy democracy that you don't know whom to listen to. So many people are talking and so many platforms all at once, and especially now this is the day and age of webinar where everybody has and their uncle and aunt have discovered webinars. So first, personally, this is the first time this is a cross, as Clemens rightly pointed out, and even a cross civilization connect, where we can get a bigger picture, as the Americans say, the 20,000 feet view of the global trade and particularly the Indian manufacturing sector, which we as well as our government and our decision makers, our policy makers, have been really trying to, help it take off the ground, especially in the last 5-6 years. So your perspectives will really help us as well as those in policy circles. So I'll begin the second part of my chat with you. If we can take a bigger picture, and I'll start with Clemens, that, can we have a global trade view of how trade winds have shifted, or have they shifted? The first thing is, have they shifted in the last 3 years, let's say culminating into the whole COVID standoff situation, starting with the trade war and other political reasons like Brexit? Have they been shifting from, as far as the export or manufacturing output, let's say manufacturing output and trade is concerned? So obviously in the last 20 years, China has been a major manufacturing powerhouse. There's no doubt about it, especially in the last 5-6 years. But in the last 3-4 years, have they shifted? And if they have shifted, in what directions have they shifted? Clemens.
I think what is shifting, I mean, for China, of course, Oliver can say much more due to his 15 years or 17 years in place in China. I only had a subsidiary there, and we were working for OEMs there, but I was the traveling guy, so Oliver was much more in place. But I guess what we have seen is, since I also made some import and export from China for companies in Europe, what shifted a lot, I guess, is that, and I think Oliver can say this much more in detail. At the beginning, China was exporting cheap and a lot of quantities to Europe, to the US. And what shifted quite a lot, I guess, everybody in China was proud when he could drive a Audi or Mercedes. And I guess things are totally changing, right? That now they have a national pride, much more also for what they are producing. They have companies like BYD becoming one of the leading electricity companies. So they are building up own Chinese brands, and these brands are bought now in China. So it's not like sending out cheap consumer goods and buying then expensive goods from Europe or the US. So I think this changed a lot, but as we have seen it, I don't know, to be fair, how it is in India at the moment, but as we've seen it in Corona crisis, still most of the goods that are needed, they're all coming from China, right? When you see masks, other protection stuff that you need, and we also talk to our investors in the Middle East, which are working for the government, and they also said at the moment the issue is that they are looking, for instance, for thermal cameras for the airports, but the problem is that they are coming out of China, and this was in the time where the production in China just stopped due to that you know, everything was closed down. So I don't know how you see it, Oliver, but I think I have seen it. We've seen that there's a shift to more quality being produced in China for the Chinese market, but overall, the export is still immense, I guess. And I only have seen, of course, that some structures like Mexico is producing also a lot for the US. So you have countries, I guess, like Thailand, Mexico, China, and they're still producing for Europe and the US. Or how do you see this, Oliver?
Yeah, but Clemens, before we go to Oliver, one quick question: then how much is Europe's dependence on Chinese products, and particularly that of Austria, in terms of high-tech imports or product imports?
I think directly and indirect a lot, as we have seen, especially in that crisis. Yeah, a lot of production just moved away from Europe and from Austria to China. A lot of things that you consume, like even if you buy a US smartphone, right? I mean,
yes,
it's produced in China. So the dependency, as we have seen it, is still an extremely high one. I mean, of course, there is
it as big as the? Sorry, but is it as big as the US, or is it slightly low because you already have industrial centers in the neighborhood like Germany and the UK?
I think a lot of production processes are developed in Europe, are patented in Europe, but then the production itself very often is based in China. And you can see this if you see the logistic chains, right? So I think the dependencies did not change a lot at the moment as we have seen it, right? And I think there might be some changes in the thinking about this, because, for instance, we are now having a project in Austria with an Indian partner. Yeah, that Indian partner, because we have that platform and we always work with an Indian partner. It's maybe also an aspect for our discussion, right? So I mean, there are a lot of extremely in India. Like we work together with Nagaro. Nagaro, I don't know if you know this. It's like Accenture, only a little bit smaller. Yeah? I think 8,000 people globally, but they are based everywhere, and they are our partner in Austria, and we're having a project in Austria for a tier 1 supplier, and we need to test a sensor, and we had to ship that sensor to India, where the development is, that they can test if that sensor works in combination with our technology. And due to the problem that at the moment in India is a shutdown, sending that sensor from Germany to where the sensor is produced, or where it's in the warehouse, to India takes 4 weeks at the moment due to the shutdown that you have in India. And then everything should be sent back and implemented here. And so you see, you still have to rethink things, because if sending a small sensor that you need to make a big software solution takes 4 weeks to ship it to India, and then maybe again, if there is still a shutdown expanded in India, another 4 weeks to Austria, you have to overthink, I guess, globalization a little bit and see, okay, how can you deal with things like this, right? And this is only software development dependency, not something else around it. And that's why at the moment, I guess everybody thinks, how can we change it? But it's the same, like, I guess, with Trump in the US, and I don't want to talk about politics, yes, but you just can't say, okay, now we move all the production back to the US or back to Europe, right? Because when you then have to pay the normal wages that you have in a factory in Europe or in the US, and then an iPhone doesn't cost you $1,100 but $2,000.
Correct.
Who is paying for it?
Correct.
That will be interesting how this changes.
Absolutely, totally agree. And the products become, don't become, they lose their competitive edge. And there's a lot of talk of automation and things like that, but these things take time in order to reduce dependency, as you so rightly said. And China has built this ecosystem for years. When people in India talk about, attracting investors and manufacturing companies from China, they don't realize that China has built this whole thing, their SEZs, their industrial parks, the logistics infrastructure. They've put so much time and money and investment into it for years. It's not easy just to say that, okay, now that it's in a tough spot, let's have their business. Oliver, you have an extensive China experience. Oliver, can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Yes. So we have a lot to draw from you in terms of your experience. So can you tell us about how the global trade situation has been changing in the last 3-4 years, especially in the last 3 months in the COVID scenario, in terms of Europe-Asia relations and India's position in the overall trade map?
Well, I mean, when you talk about the last 3-4 years, it's just similar to what we just said before. I mean, what definitely changed in China, and what I've seen before I left I stopped living in China, the quality of the local products, the gap between the foreign companies, foreign manufacturers who are producing there, and the local competitors, the gap of the quality really, they kind of like almost close the gap, and in many industries are very close to closing the gap of the quality. So like in my early days in Shanghai, our main claim for European SMEs or German SMEs was like German quality made in China, because they kind of like get their production site there, but they still have the quality, they have the know-how, they send people from the headquarters over there to get the factory going. And they kind of like had this in the early years of my time in Shanghai, let's say 2006, 2007, 2008, all these years. But over the last 3-4 years, like the whole idea of the whole approach changed, because the local competitors kept coming up. It's a different pricing policy. They also kept up with the prices. But the fact is, like, it shifted in the sense of that, like in some industry, look at the electric car industry. Clemens mentioned it before as well. There's, I don't know how many brands now in China who are focusing on electric cars, but it's also like something they decide in like within a week, okay, now all the buses in one city have to be electric. Boom, done. and it's done within like a week. And there were like 12,000 buses implemented in a city in southern China within a week, and it was just done. And of course they built them up before, but now then they just brought them out at the same time. So there's a lot of, the change is that a European company has to really look out, what are they focusing on now in China? They can't just focus, okay, our product has a better quality. Those times are over. They have to look at their brand. They have to look at their sales strategy. They have to look at their people they're working with, and also where they are. and really focus on the target market now. That shifted definitely in China in the manufacturing industry. On the other hand, when you look at the global situation and now with the crisis, it's like, I think the dependency was interesting to see with the medical supplies now during the crisis. As we mentioned before, I mean, masks were imported. Every government in Europe was like, we sent another plane full of masks and protection clothing and all that, and it was almost like a competition, which country sends more planes. Until then, China took the initiative to sending their own planes. So there was a lot of things going on, and I've had it coincidentally. I got a lot involved in this because my brother-in-law actually works for a medical device company and had to import masks over the last 2 months, on a daily basis, and every day had to deal with the China customs getting the stuff out and getting it sorted. And there was a lot of dependency, but why? But then companies in Europe suddenly started to produce masks, company who never done that before. But then obviously the dependency was still there, because when you work in the medical field, for example, with the crisis, you need suppliers that you certified before. You cannot just take any mask there is, or just because it's a fabric, it will protect you. So there's obviously certificates involved, there is studies involved, there is research involved. And when you have an established supplier-client relationship, you're not necessarily changing it during the crisis. And with the crisis, now everyone, and no matter if Europe or India or China, everyone had to do now their homework and say, okay, now we can press the restart button and let's take the chance to get positive out of it. And where India stands in this, especially with European companies, when you have European clients, or if there is a European headquarter that has a subsidiary in India and is very proud of its subsidiary in India, the thing is right now, every European company will make their homework first at the headquarters, saying, okay, we got to clean up here first, we got to focus on Europe, we got to focus where we are, and then we think about the subsidiaries. So obviously these subsidiaries can get a little bit out of their own comfort zone and saying, we're talking to the headquarters, what can we do here? Can we be more initiative? Can we do something about this? The situation is like, talk to your headquarter, saying, okay, India is opening up maybe in certain areas. It's you guys obviously know that better than me right now, what the daily progress is there. And on the other hand, Indian local manufacturing companies who do have clients overseas have to be a little bit patient right now, because European companies is like, they have to first sort their own thing out. Right. And it's a little bit tough to like fully approach them, hey, get them out of the crisis. But that's why I'm saying, as an Indian local manufacturer, you have also now the time to do your homework, look at your factory. How does it look like? Can we improve something that we can invite European clients again? Or when we do a meeting via Zoom or any other electronic means, can we still do a virtual factory tour? Something we can think about now as an Indian manufacturing company is like, okay, use the crisis now to be even more attractive to European customers.
Great. Before I move to the next question, I want to understand the direction of our talk. In the sense, I want to explore that, there are two scenarios being painted in India. One is that now that China's image in the manufacturing world is in dire straits, let's do more of, reforms to attract business from China, and we will be able to succeed in getting some of it. That is one scenario. The other scenario is that we are so past the pole in terms of attracting international business that we will not be able to compete with China, and that is the pessimistic view. But at least let's take this crisis to fix what has gone wrong, and at least help ourselves reach our potential in our own way, even if focusing on the local market. Let's not think of competing with China because it's already in a pole position. These are two scenarios. Reality could be somewhere in the middle. But what is the global perspective when of an international investor, let's say in Europe, when you think of setting up a plant in uh, China versus India, what are what is their impression? What are their criteria that they look for? Uh, what are the all the parameters they look at, and how do they make their decision in terms of setting up a plant? Let's start with Clemens.
That's a good question. To be fair, I have no. I've also seen the question in the Q&A, right? Are they moving with the plans and so on? I have no idea at the moment. As mentioned before, also concerning the supply chain, right? Where do you have the people producing? Where do you have the technology for this? So for me at the moment, I see also with the Corona crisis, I don't really have a clear view on this from my point of view, how things will change, right? Also, how are we going to open up, like with airlines, for instance, which are now changing certain planes to cargo planes instead of using them now for people. So are we having then more capacities for cargos, and can we leave the factories where they are? Do we even put more focus on this right now? And also maybe quickly coming back to what you've said before concerning China and India and the difference, right? I mean, in China, they were able to say, let's go that direction. This city now is for car manufacturers. This city now is for, I don't know, pharmaceutical companies. And then you can put a focus on this. You set up the global logistic chains. And I guess to compete with this advantage that they had one strategy, and it was not. I am not sure if we can break through this change that we are chains in logistics that we are having here right now, and I guess the issue that I don't know how you see it, Oliver, but the issue that we see it here also not in Europe, I guess, is the problem that there's a missing unity. That we say, okay, now where we know that things like this can happen, let's see how we can orchestrate this in the EU, that we have, I don't know, enough protection in our company, that in our countries, that we have enough production of food, that we have enough production of, I don't know, electronic goods to produce a mobile phone or whatever. And if this does not happen, I guess right now in the crisis, everybody speaks about it. When the crisis is over, 3 months later, nobody will speak about it from my point of view. And I mean, to be fair, the same applies to the US. Look at this, right? If you're a democratic state, you have different rules than when you're a Republican state, right? So I'm not sure at the moment if China
or India even figure on the radar of companies over there. Right now, it's about how to self-sustain, how to get in the supplies and have them in place. Brilliant insight, Clemens. That's really helpful. Obviously, in this situation of crisis, all the countries have to first think about their facilities, their people, their safety, and then all these things can be figured out later. That's a great insight. Thank you for that, Oliver.
Can you repeat the last question, because you were just keep breaking up? Sorry.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So the last question was that did you hear the part about the comparison between India and China?
Yeah. It was just your last sentence. Anyways, I know.
That was not important. The question still remains the same that I asked Clemens.
Then we're clear.
Yes.
Regarding establishing a plant right now from a European perspective, looking at the crisis personally, but it's just my own opinion, I don't think any European company thinks right now of opening a plant or building a plant anywhere because of the crisis situation. But as I mentioned before, first to do your homework in-house in the headquarters. But I don't know. I don't know what happens in the future. I don't know how the whole crisis will affect the next 3 to 6 months. But personally, I don't think building a plant somewhere in Asia is on the top list of the majority of the companies. I don't think so. Maybe there are some who want to, but I mean, we also have to see that many manufacturing companies are already having plants in Asia, be it in India or in China. But what Indian companies can do to get more more response from European clients is like also to look at how do I look, how do I present myself to the global world as an Indian manufacturing company. Is like for a European client, if it's there's more involved than just the quality of the product. So you might be a local manufacturing company in India and you make excellent products, very precise, on time, and this is all great. But European customers look differently at you as a potential supplier, as a potential long-term partner. First of all, they want to have long-term partners. Again, anywhere in Asia, be it in China or in India. But what does a European client look at? They look at how does the company present itself? How does it present itself online? How does the logo look like? How does the building look like of the factory? And it's like also like if travel restrictions are over again, maybe in 6 months from now, and the potential client can come and visit you, Europeans look at the overall appearance of the building. They look at the entrance area. How clean is it? What's the surrounding? Is it easy to drive in there by car? Or what's the logistics? Where is it? Where even is it? And also when obviously you want to show to a European potential customer, you want to be a proud factory owner. You want to show your factory around. You want to do the tour around the factory. You want to show your machine park. You want to show the products around. And that's obviously great. And that's also where we can think of right now in this situation where probably the next few weeks and months, we won't have many visitors in our factories and neither anywhere. And Indian manufacturing companies won't have a lot of visitors from overseas the next few weeks and months to look at, can I put more digitalization in my factory? Can I optimize my process? Can I do something with AR, for example, in my factory? But also like when a European customer walks through and he sees those things and how organized the factory is and how easy the walkthrough is and how good the coffee is and how clean the bathroom is, then there's also a plus for you to decide for your product. So it's not so much only about the product. Obviously that's important and very important, but it's also like, how does your overall company building look like, and how is it infrastructures in regards to digital world, IoT, industry 4.0? And now it's the time where Indian manufacturing companies could really use the time to take a step forward to be more, even more interesting to European potential customers.
Thank you, Oliver. That's again a great insight, very helpful. Is the perception, is the image that an investor takes away from India, which is of utmost importance. Completely agree on that score. And all these parameters you mentioned, in your experience, have the Chinese companies been working on these areas? Obviously, business started to flow to China much before these technologies came into play. So I do understand that they are at a much advanced level and they don't have to prove themselves so much as Indian companies do. But what are the right things that the Chinese companies did in order to attract investors? And I'm talking about the last 10 years, let's say.
I mean, there was a lot of like government-funded industrial parks that bloomed up outside of, for example, outside Shanghai region. There were like cities or small villages where industrial parks were built and sort of semi-connected to the whole Shanghai industry region, and then put a fast train there, and it's only a 30-minute ride from downtown. So there was a lot of like official investment into and support in these things, and those companies who were then part of or had the permission to go into this industrial park had to fulfill certain standards. So they were actually selected because of that. And so that's obviously one of the reasons. And as I mentioned before, I mean, the whole comparing India and China is very difficult. There's lots of differences, and we're not going to go into details. Otherwise, we're going to sit here forever. But the point is, I think one important thing that where India already improved a lot. And I've been traveling to India since 2007. I remember in January 2007 was my first trip to Bangalore. It was my first Imtex that I organized an exhibition booth there. And the exhibition building was still in construction, but the exhibition was going through. And now when you look at the BIEC, for example, it's a beautiful building. And the whole surrounding is nice, and it's built up. So where India already improved, and it's all totally on the right way, is to keep deadlines, to have a better timing, where over the last 10, 15 years, there was a huge improvement already in India to say like, okay, we got a deadline, let's keep the deadline. And I think focusing even more on that topic now after the crisis, to say like, okay, now it's even more important to say, we're going to be here, set a target, by then we're going to be here, we're going to reach the target, and so forth. And
there's something deeper there, Oliver.
Yeah.
Sorry to come in there, but I've been attending conferences on this topic, where international speakers would come in, and discussions would happen around these points. And I've been doing that for the last 10, 15 years. Things like language crop up, and timeliness, punctuality. But still, I have always felt that there is something deeper that China offers, that despite disparity or differences in language, and the fact that initially China used to make a lot of spurious products. There was a lot of shortcoming in their product quality. Initially, I'm talking about 10, 15 years ago. Even their punctuality could be suspect. There were lots of issues, but still, American and European manufacturers went with them. And your point of logistics infrastructure is really interesting, because I think that could be one of the attractions. But there is something deeper. Maybe they are really hungry for global business. They really want it, and they are willing to make amends along with the investors. That is one. And the education part, that they are very serious on learning the latest in tech, and they send their best people abroad to get the education. So perhaps I just want to get deeper into this to understand what really could be done. So thank you for that great answer. And I'll put that question to Clemens as well. That what are the things that China has been doing right, or anyone, which could attract investment from Europe and the US, could be doing right? Clemens?
It's just thinking about, in general, I'm very much aligned with what Oliver said, right? And I guess I did the first cross-border business with China, Hong Kong to Europe in 2005, 2006, something like this, I guess. And the thing is that most people not even spoke English, right? So you even had the burden of the language, you had the burden of the currency exchange, because you can't exchange the RMB, you have the burden with the duty and so on. But it still worked out because, for instance, in a short period in my former company, we were personalizing USB sticks. So you had your name on it, and when you put it into the computer, based on the technology that we developed, it also knows who you are and could talk to you in person and shows you personalized content and that. And the thing is, as Oliver said, when you wanted to have a USB stick, you flew to Hong Kong, crossed the border to Shenzhen, and you have all the production facilities for electronic devices in Shenzhen. So you have everything on one plot, right? When you are interested in financial business, you go to now also Shenzhen, and before to Shanghai, for instance. So I guess being able to have a strategy and saying, okay, in this area, this will happen, in this area, this will happen. For this part, we need a connection with a port and an airport, and we need the roads, and we just connect all of this, and we do this. Or right now, it's they are connecting Guangzhou, Shenzhen, and Hong Kong as one area with one high-speed train by ship and so on. I guess that's something that is quite hard to implement in a democratic nation like India or in Europe, right? And you can't just say, we don't care if there are people living. Everything has advantages and disadvantages, right? But if you just can say, this is the strategy, this is where we are going to, and we just do this, then and you align everything around it just based on this strategy, then you have a big advantage, I guess, on this side. Leaving aside now all the disadvantages, of course, that come with it. And I think that's also what I meant before, or what we see in Europe, right? Like France and Germany are now say, okay, we need to have a 500 billion fund that we want to invest. And then other countries say, no, we want to have a different way. We come up with a different solution. And then you have discussions for 3 or 4 months. And then the crisis is over and nobody knows anymore why we needed that fund. And then this chance is gone again, right?
Yes, yes.
And I think that's a big difference. Yeah, it's a big advantage, I guess, for us as people living in that countries. But as a global strategy, in certain terms, that might be an issue.
Great. Thanks, Clemens. Before we return to this point and how technologies like AR and VR could help Indian manufacturing and logistics companies build better data decision-making faculties and improvements, I want to understand how is the situation in the ground in the Europe and Austria in particular in these times of crisis. Are you opening up already? Is the economy opening up? What has been the extent of the crisis over there?
I think there's a difference between open up and open up as we see it right now. We are now, I guess, most of the economy is opening up. I guess only bars, nightclubs are closed. But the problem is, I guess, the demand is not there as we see it right now, right? Our restaurant opened up again, but we have certain regulations that only 4 adults and 4 children may sit on a table and stuff like this. Waiters have to run around with a mask. So somehow the people in Vienna, I guess it's a little bit better, but people don't go out that much anymore because it's not that nice if you just go out and you only allowed in a small group and with face mask and stuff like this.
Okay.
And I guess that's also as you've seen it, what I meant before with Volkswagen, right? They closed the factory because due to Corona they were not able to get the supplies from their suppliers from Italy, for instance. Now they opened up again and started at 100% and then went down again because demand went down by 70%, because people, before they invest into a car, they invest into food and putting money aside because everybody is afraid what happens if there is a second wave and everything is shut down again. So yes. I guess the main issue as we see it right now is not only that we can't open up everything again, but I guess it's the missing trust in the future right now. That's a big issue, I guess.
Thank you. It's great insight. Oliver?
Yeah, I mean, we are all looking forward that everything goes back to normal, but what is normal? And then there's this term that brings even more uncertainty to many people, is this new normality. Yeah. And this is this term that
I can't hear that word anymore. I can't
exactly.
hear it anymore.
New normal and unprecedented. These are 2 words. Unprecedented and new normal.
Exactly. So this term is flying around in everyone's mind, and nobody really knows what it means, and people have different approaches towards it. And I think this whole crisis situation makes it even harder to compare different economies, because we all had to deal with it, and everyone dealt with it differently. I mean, every individual dealt with it differently, every family dealt with it differently, and every company dealt with it differently. And so many countries dealt with it differently, as we know. Even in Europe, we had different approaches towards the whole thing. So I think now comparing India with China, or India with Europe, or Europe with China, those are comparisons right now that work even less than before, because it's now important to say, okay, let's get over this, let's restart, let's think about what our company can do in the future and how we can make sure that our employees in the company have satisfaction at work again, have a sort of stable work again, and how can we proceed with the success of the company. So I think it's personally not very productive to think about well, how could this be? And crisis and not crisis, what happens after? First of all, what happens in the next few weeks and months, nobody knows. And it's very hard to control on a global scale. The only thing we can control is our own surrounding, and that's what we can influence. And that's why when we think about, again, where we are as manufacturing companies in India, we can think about what can we do now to make our company more productive and ready for the future years to come.
Thank you. Thank you, Oliver. And it's so true. One thing that this crisis has proven, that despite all the medical and technological progress of the last 100 years, we all stand helpless against a tiny microbe, and we're taking months to even come up with any kind of solution. But there is a lot of hope, because as I was reading the papers, that people have figured out a lot of things about the virus and the microbe, which was not possible the last time such a big pandemic hit the world, which was in 1918. So there is good hope, and hopefully, so the difference I quickly want to understand from you is, see, in India, this is the 4th phase of the lockdown, and this has continued for about 3 months now, and this is the biggest and the longest lockdown in the world. In India, but in Europe, some economies are opening up. There's some easing up of business. So compared, and as we talked the other day, Clemens told me that schools could be thinking of opening up, which is a big deal over here. We cannot even think of having schools open for the next 1 year at least, the way things are here. So what is the overall status of life there in Europe? How the economies, are you venturing out? Are the factories opening up partly or wholly? Oliver?
Well, we can see that the factories are definitely opening, and most of the companies even now stop the home office scenario, at least for part-time. At least they say, okay, 1 day a week or 2 days a week, everybody has to come in again. And this is not to like put anything negative effect, or it's more like, hey, we're still working together, although everybody worked together virtually now by home office and Zoom and Skype and all that. But people, especially with bigger companies, they're trying to get the people in again to see, hey, the factory is still there. It's not just the boss sitting in his living room and giving orders, but it's actually, there's still something going on. Machines are running again and all that. So, but that takes a while. And it's also, we know that a human creature is a creature of habits. And the whole crisis had its good things and bad things, of course, as we know, but it will be very difficult. And Clemens can tell more about this because he has 15 employees in his company, to get people from their home couch again into the office is not an easy step after having them 2 months on their couch and on their sofa doing their work from there. And then suddenly you say, hey, we have an important client coming in a month or two, get ready to prepare the office again. On the other hand, when people see it now with the F&B industry opening up, but the shops are all opening, it's the 2 biggest shopping streets in Vienna are crowded again on the Friday afternoon. Like before, the only difference is you wear the mask when you walk into the shop. So we're getting back there. The vibe is nicer. The people are also friendlier. You have more smiles on their faces. It's not about, okay, it's like, hey, we're here again. We can walk in the city again, and we can buy clothes and shoes again, and that's a positive thing for everyone.
Yes, that's a great to hear. Clemens, how about employee morale? How did you deal with the employee morale when the crisis struck, and how has it improved now? And other things about opening up of economy.
In terms of employees, it's quite hard because, I mean, you have to explain them, right? I mean, even if now shops are opening up in Vienna, when you have a global business, our clients are still under emergency mode, mostly, yeah? And that applies from really all over the world, as mentioned before, New Zealand to the US, right? As mentioned, factories are under uncertainties. They open up again, then they see there's no demand. And maybe one thing to add to what Oliver said, yeah, from also from the feeling, you see that the streets are full. But as you can see then from the figures, the revenue is not there. So it feels and looks like normal, but it doesn't act normal. And if people are not paying, like, I mean, Emirates just released that they are firing 30,000 people, which is 30% of the whole staff.
Wow.
Lufthansa says maybe in 2023 they will have the same amount of planes in the air than they have right now. So in 3 years. So from my point of view, it's really I don't know. As an entrepreneur, you always try to foresee what is coming, but I guess that coronavirus put us all in a position of something we haven't even seen. So even in 1918, as you've said, I guess it wasn't that tough because globalization wasn't that extreme as we have it right now. So I am not 100% sure how we will take it from there. Even in Austria, right, we have requests now from clients, but even if everything opens up, we are not allowed to go to the factories because they still have regulations that they're not allowed to go there. So it's a little bit a weird situation in between what is normal, what is this new normal, and is this really normal? I don't think it's normal right now. It feels more normal, but it's still not normal.
Thank you. That insight helps us in India. Thank you. That's very insightful.
But I know that in India, it's really, really crazy. As mentioned, since we're now having a project with Indian partners, and I think India at the moment, the shutdown is really, really extreme. So I had talks now with guys in Mexico, in Brazil, and in Thailand, where it's also not easy, especially Thailand also expanded, I guess, the shutdown. But somehow it's not as extreme, I guess, as it is in India right now. As far as I got the feedback from our partners, because I mean you're really shut down also from logistics side and so.
Yes, that's so true. That's true. And the blanket shutdown or the total shutdown is harming businesses, and many people are feeling that the cure could become worse than the disease itself in terms of the economic impact. But one smart thing that the government has done is to divide the country into different zones, so red zone and orange and green in terms of the severity of cases, and they're dealing it with accordingly. So it's both up and down as far as the treatment of the situation is concerned over here. Just to share with you what's happening in India.
Oh, that works very well. They did the same thing in Mexico. And one of our partners is in Mexico City, another one in Chihuahua, and they have different speed of opening up. So at least then you have certain areas, I guess, within the country where you can speed a little bit quicker with opening up the economy.
Okay. Thank you. Now, can we take a question from Mr. Sinha, if you can see in the chat window? Mr. Sachin Sinha asks, can you read the question? Are you able to open the window? So could we take this question from Sinha? Mr. Sinha? Okay.
I see the one concerning the research in Europe and how this will change.
Yes, there's a question on globalization. Okay, so Mr. Sinha is saying he's unable to take the call. So let me read this out. With reopening of this, yes, please, Clemens, go ahead.
No, but I've just seen with the current global pandemic situation, most experts from countries like China has been diminishing, and China being the leading supplier of tier 2 and tier 3 goods. Do you see a shift where this supply starts manufacturing in Europe itself and becomes self-sustained, or how do you see the doors open countries in India for these supplies?
I'd like to answer that. That is from Shaky C, a user called Shaky. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I only see these two from Shaky C in my Q&A.
There was another one in the chat.
But do you want to answer this first? The Industry 4.0 question?
There was another one in the chat. I'm sorry, I didn't see that. I looked at the Q&A.
So in essence, Shaky C asks whether the whole approach to Industry 4.0 changed because of the pandemic. That's the essence of his question.
Can you please repeat? Now the connection was bad.
So he asks whether the approach or advancements and implementation of Industry 4.0? Or to put it simply, will Industry 4.0 change because of the pandemic in terms of implementation?
I think it's speeding up as we see it by now from our side, at least. Yeah. And I guess when we go more in the Industry 4.0, it gives, I guess, high wage countries, high salary countries, like in Europe, also the possibility to bring back productions to Europe, because as long as you need 20,000 workers in a factory, I guess it's not really doable that you're having factories in Austria that's not working at the moment. And that's I guess what technology is changing. And on the other hand side, as mentioned at the beginning, they need to see to keep certain standards and being more efficient so that it makes sense that companies are running in Europe. And I guess this is why Industry 4.0 is speeding up. On the other hand side, we are coming back a little bit to the issues that we had before, and that's something that we see with our clients. We are having so many regulations, right? Things in most of our client sites, data cannot be processed in the cloud. It has to run on premise. You can't use predictive models because of data protection. We even have clients where we are not allowed to see and to track if people are actually working or not working, even if we know this because the union forbids it. So I guess Industry 4.0 is very important, but it's still, again, it's put into a lot of limitations in our society. So it will not be 100% effective. I guess you won't have 100% effectiveness, and I guess also as an employer, you don't want to control everybody and have everything under total monitoring. But I guess in Europe, I don't know how you see it, Oliver, compared to China, we are losing a lot of effectiveness due to that we are not able to use all of the possibilities due to restrictions, limitations, data protection, union, and so on.
Oliver?
Yes, it's absolutely that the issue. And I mean, it's like, for me personally, coming back now to Europe after 15 years in Asia, the whole data situation, the data protection thing is new. And I had to before I started my company, I used like 2 weeks to read that entire law, to go through it. And it's yeah, as we said before, everything has advantages and disadvantages, and it's important that we use our advantages that we have, especially now after the crisis, instead of focusing on what doesn't work.
Okay. So you're saying that because of the privacy laws, data privacy laws, and I think you're talking about GDPR, right?
Yeah.
So Industry 4.0 could suffer a setback in Europe because of GDPR. Is that a future that you see, possible direction it could take?
I wouldn't say it's going to be a setback, but every company who has to do that has to just make it thorough and has to do it right. And that's what's the thing with this. Yeah, shall we go to that question in the chat, or do you still want to go to that second question here? Because I think we answered that.
Yes, the question in the chat from Mr. Sinha,
yes,
who asked about deglobalization. With reopening of businesses soon all across the globe, do you foresee deglobalization as well taking shape gradually?
The question was to me, so I guess I answer. It depends what we see as globalization. I think certain things will go less and some things will stay the same. Will we have international trade? Yes, we will have international trade. I don't believe we will stop that personally. Do we fly less? I don't know. It's something that we have to see how it goes. Personally, I don't think that we're only going to do local sourcing now around the corner from everyone else. I mean, we have the admonition by the government here, for example, in Austria, that spend your holidays in Austria, help the small hotels in Austria, help the local restaurants in Austria to get the economy going again. And I think every country can do that. But when it comes to like the industry, we're talking here about business to business, I don't think it's possible to just focus on clients within like 10 miles around your own premises. I don't think that's possible. So I think there's still going to be international corporations and international trade and businesses going on. Obviously, we have to see how the whole situation will be, how the import-export situation will be, it also depends on the goods, I guess, what it is, on the products itself. And there's lots of open factors right now that are hard to consider.
Okay. Now, a related question comes from Shaky C, who has asked the question before, and that is something I want to ask as well, and I want to thank Shaky for that perspective. Is that there will be some caution. There could be things are not going to be the same in terms of cross-border trade because of this crisis. There will be some way to build a buffer in order to avert such a sudden shock in the future. For example, people may start to near shore, as they say in the manufacturing parlance, that is, manufacture close to the demand center. For example, within Europe, one could have more industrialization in order to cater to the local demand, for example. That is Shaky C's question, which I'm just putting differently. So he says that and China being the leading supplier of tier 2 and tier 3 goods, do you see a shift when these suppliers start manufacturing in Europe? So do you see that shift when the suppliers of goods from China think about manufacturing in Europe itself?
I mean, as Oliver said before, right now we have companies producing masks that were producing underwear before or stuff like this, right? But I guess this is also very applicable at the moment because customers were not able to go to the retail store and buy underwear, as a stupid example. Okay. But I think when we are turning back to normal and the crisis is over, I am not sure if too many people will raise their hand and say, "I'm sorry, but where's that mask production?" Right in front of our in front of our city, and the same applies also right now to Germany, right? Yesterday you could read in the news in Germany they were buying hundreds of millions of masks and everything that they could get at the same time in China, and now they bought too much and put all of them and even don't want to take them from the suppliers in Germany because they were so crazy and said, yeah, we need 500 million masks, for instance, and now nobody's using them because also all the retailers were buying masks. So I am not sure, and I guess this coming back to what we've said before, this is, I guess, the issue that we have in Europe, that a lot of politicians are reactive. Now we have a crisis, now everything should be produced here. And then when we are starting production again, everybody says, yeah, but we have to focus on our core competencies for high quality, for doing research and doing Industry 4.0. Why should we produce masks, right? That doesn't make any sense. So I'm not sure if we really will learn something out of this in the long term. I don't think so, to be fair. I don't know how you see it, Oliver.
Oliver, do you see some near-shoring as a result of this?
I see pretty much the same. We won't have, as Clemens said, we won't have like mass production around the corner in Austria, and there's things we have to import and things we depend on, and it's not going to be everything. The world's not going to turn around entirely. Many things changed and many things will change, but not everything will change.
Okay, great. Now let's talk a bit about your business, the work that you do, before we turn to the last segment of the talk, which is going to be about Indian manufacturing and the perception problem and other issues that could be quickly fixed during these times of crisis. But first, let's talk about the work that you do. You mentioned what you do in the beginning, but I want to dwell a bit more on that aspect of your work. So Oliver, in terms of manufacturing SMEs in particular, because our sector comprises more than 90% of small and medium enterprises. And in these times, most of the channels have just stopped, and Indian manufacturing depends a lot on human interaction. very little on digitalization of their offerings. So what are the things that you suggest to an SME in order to reach out to their prospective and existing clients? And you, as well as not only do that, but as well as use this time to really race ahead of the competition using their strengths.
I mean, I mentioned a couple of things before, but I can go a little bit more into detail. When you look at, I mean, what is your face of the company? It's the website, of course. It's definitely something that every company has to do on a regular basis to a critical self-analysis. Is my website still attractive? And you can get feedback from anyone on that. Especially right now, you can ask a friend overseas and get feedback on it, and just say, hey, can you check on it? So the website is definitely something. Look at it critically with your people and think about of what you can improve on it. And then also is like, how well known is your brand in India and outside of India if you target international clients? How well is your brand really known? Do my customers know me? Do my customers know where I am? Am I in Pune? Am I in Mumbai? Am I in Bangalore? Wherever I am. Where is, how well known is my brand? And how well known are my products? So those are the questions right now in the crisis we can ask ourselves, and everyone in India can ask themselves, saying like, where are we right now? And where do we want to be 3 months, 6 months after the crisis? And then act accordingly towards that. And I think, because you said before, it depends a lot on human interaction and digitalization. I think there's always a balance.
What are the channels that people can use in absence of the the avenues of human interaction as it is right now?
I mean, we can use all the tools there are out there. I mean, India has a huge advantage towards, when we start with comparing again, towards China, that first of all, you all speak English, and the internet is free. And there's a tool there's lots of tools we can use, and whatever fits to your company. I'm not a person who says, you do this, and do this, and those are the ideal marketing channels or the ideal channels to promote your company. Because it always depends on, where's your company now? What are your targets in the next 6 months? And then define the channel. But the tools are out there, and you need to define it for yourself. What are the right tools? Is it LinkedIn? Is it YouTube? Is it whatever? Or is it just the website, or whatever tools there are? But there is no, this is the overall ideal channel to promote a company. That's
So the reason I'm picking your brain, your advertising brain, to be specific, is that, see, there are a lot of exhibitions that stand cancelled, and the trade shows that are going to come in the next 4 or 5 months also are uncertain. And these were the expos on which a majority of us depended. So in absence of which, there's a huge vacuum, and people don't know what to do for the next 5-6 months. So what could be their strategy? Maybe an integrated, concerted strategy to stay on track as far as their marketing is concerned.
Yeah, that's obviously, the exhibition is a huge thing, not everywhere where you got canceled. In fact, there is apparently in June now an exhibition again in Shanghai opening up with tons of restrictions, but apparently they're pushing through. But yeah, I'm honest with you. I'm definitely looking forward to the next IMTEX again, because I always loved those shows, to be honest, down in Bangalore, and I like the Die and Mold in Mumbai as well, because as you said, it was special. There were lots of people. It was great interactions, and now there is no exhibition. So I think the point is really, as I said before, work on the tools you can use now. Don't think of like, well, what I am not able to do. Well, it's useless right now to work on an exhibition layout, because we don't even know when the next exhibition is held. So it's focus on what you have and focus on what you can do well, and use your advantages instead of thinking, well, this country is better than us, or this company can do that better than us. What do you have and what can you do? And if you can't do it by yourself, then use professional help to help you getting that going. But I think the first thing is just like stick to the basics. Is my website up to date? Is it attractive? Is my logo still fitting for the 2020s? Is my whole image as a company still attractive for my target markets? And that's obviously a difference if it's local or if it's global. And if it's a global thing, then probably we have to do some work on it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very helpful. Clemens, I saw some interesting examples of your work, especially in data visualization, for example. So my question to you is, can you give us some examples of the work that you have been doing for your clients in the area of data visualization, as well as the physical world, which is routing, in different systems and different facilities. So just can you give a couple of examples or case studies of the work you've done with your clients and how they can be implemented in the Indian condition? If you can add that part in there.
I mean, maybe just one thing at the beginning. I guess India has a lot of potential and a lot of knowledge, right? This is, for instance, why we work with Indian partners together for projects in Austria. The interesting thing is, from my point of view, that India is exporting a lot of that knowledge and not using it at the home market, as far as I have seen it when I went to India. That's quite interesting. I've been in Gujarat at the exhibition, which was opened up by your Prime Minister, and you could see a lot of new technologies, AI, and so on, what's being produced in India, what's being developed in India, and most of the technologies is being exported. So I think maybe like China was producing for the outside and then turned it around and produced for the inside, for the home market. Maybe that's something that might be a very good move, using some of that know-how, I guess also then for Indian clients. From our side, what we have done is we are now having a lot of projects in supply chain and optimization of routes and ensuring that the right production goes on the right spot. So as mentioned, we now work for the biggest tier 1 supplier, for instance, in the automotive industry, and we're optimizing the processes for them so that they see, okay, when we get in the supply chain, goods into our warehouse, are they put on the right spot? And when we deliver something into the just-in-time production, are we taking the right goods, so that when we deliver the wrong part, the whole production line stops, and every minute costs them $100,000. And when you stop for 10 minutes, it's $1 million that you've just lost. One of the best solutions at the moment that we're having, because it's just very easy to implement, even in huge venues, like factories with 1.2 million square meter, 1.5 million square meter and more, is this maintenance solution I was talking about. We developed it with Jones Lang LaSalle, with JLL, initially for office buildings to improve maintenance routines, because, for instance, in Hong Kong, in one office tower, they have 7 people every day maintaining the elevator, maintaining the air condition, ensuring the cleanliness of the building. Until now, they had no documentation, right? So people just could sit in the morning and say, I've done everything, I checked everything, and you could not really control it when you just write it in an Excel sheet, or when you just write it into on paper, for instance. So we now digitalized that process, and we could set up that skyscraper in 2 days. And now they have full control, and they're saving a lot of money, because also due to computer vision, for instance, when they're checking the cleanliness of the toilet, we know who checked it. We know that he answered all of the questions, that he was on the right time there, because he had to check this every 4 hours. And when he's checking it, we take a picture in the background, put it into a computer deep learning algorithm, and we know if the toilets were really clean. And they are spending all over Hong Kong millions of dollars every year for high quality of toilet cleanliness. And they were pretty sure that this demand was not fulfilled, for instance. And now, based on computer vision, you can say, hey, 60% was not done properly. You are owing us 4 million Hong Kong dollar, for instance.
Wow.
And the same applies to the production facility that I mentioned in Mexico, right? They were not properly doing doing the inspection routines. Out of 200 routines, they were only doing around 140, 150, and due to that, they had 8 to 10 stops of the production line every month. And we just calculated with the client together how much output they are losing, and we just calculated that they are losing around $36 million on output because production line stops, because inspection routines have not met the requirements of the machine delivery guys, where you didn't check is there enough oil, isn't there enough pressure in a pump, or stuff like this. Really things that are not very that are really not using a lot of knowledge, but you just have to do it in the proper way. And we, with our solution, were able to implement the solution in another 2 days, add that maintenance solution on top, integrated into the systems. And after a week, they were just able to improve that process and see also in real time which of the employees is not doing it correct, which do you have to retrain. And then based on this now, they are saving millions of dollars with a very, very little investment. And this is what I like so much. And I guess that's also the reason why we are now, or my team and me are since 12 years in augmented reality. It started at something very complicated. And over the last years, due to that, we work with really big corporates or Navy and stuff like this. We could bring it to a point where you can very easily implement it. Very often I even try to leave out augmented reality because everybody's afraid and said, oh, that's expensive and complicated. And in this case, it's the other way around, right? Due to that we are able to use the camera of a smartphone or a Windows computer. You just don't need all of the hardware, and it's friction-free to be implemented. But I'm trying to leave out the augmented reality part so that not everybody is scared and thinks it's expensive and complicated. But these are the most easiest use case. And once we started, then we see that there are new use cases coming from our companies, because the user within the facilities start using these technologies, which are very easy to implement. And then the next step is combine it with IoT, so you can go through the factory and you have a live monitoring and you see the status of your facility in real time. You can restart machines quickly so that you have a very short shutdown, for instance. You can use it for production purposes. So you have a factory, you change the shop floor, and with our technology, you can go through the factory and you see, does this fit together? Because one of our clients, for instance, did not check this in advance, and then they have €5 million damage because they had to rechange the steel work because it was just going through a pillar. And in the original plans, this pillar was not there. Just somebody put it there the last years. Yeah. And so there is really, really a lot of use. And this is why what we are now trying to do is with our partners globally, when they have certain use cases, we try to see that they are making a middleware running on top of our solution. You can see it a little bit like an app in an app store. You implemented our platform, you start with maintenance, then improvement of supply chain, then you use the live monitoring, then maybe an onboarding for new employees that they are guided through it. And it's a little bit like on the phone. You download a new feature and you have much more new possibilities running on top of it. And this all, and I guess that's the important thing in crisis, without a high upfront investment and with a big return of investment all over the lifetime of the product.
Interesting. That's great to hear, Clemens. And I'm very confident that Indian manufacturing companies are in good need of such a solution. And I hope they make use of this opportunity to reach out to you for these solutions. Now let's have a quick chat with Amit. He has a question and he wants to put this across. In fact, I wanted him to put this across to you, panelists. Let's unmute him. Amit, can you hear us?
Yes, yes. Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon, Amit.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, for you, good morning. Sorry.
All good.
Where are you calling from, Amit? Which part of the country?
Yes, I'm Amit Pathak. I'm calling from Gandhinagar, which is in Gujarat, India.
Oh,
and
okay.
I'm working in a European company, which is based at Portugal. I'm working there as a general manager. And it was very nice. The main thing is that question is one thing, but the main thing is that the insight and the discussions and the questions unanswered which you have put, it was very nice. And in coming days, and I was thinking a lot about why we have all those fantastic brain, and despite of that, China is much ahead, because right now China and India comparison is everyone is talking about. Not only now, in the past also we were talking, but at least nowadays it is like you already shared that 3 months, 4 months will surely be talking about that, and then later on at least that it's like a soda bubble, it will boost, like. But being a manufacturing guy, I'm thinking that certain things that we really need to work on it, and that is mainly the discipline that we need to follow. And I think this coronavirus is bringing a much more discipline about the hygiene, that which you have rightly pointed out, that when the European customer comes and to India to look as a partner, they are looking definitely the hygiene factor, the organization, and those kind of things. So those are the very important aspect that we really need to work on it, and to bring at least the goal may be to attract the outside customers or foreigner customers. But at least it will also bring a lot of growth in terms of mindset, because it is not about only the attracting customers from outside or foreign customers, but if our mindset is changing, then what China is getting benefit, that not now we will get, but at least if we have developed this mindset, then definitely we will be able to do much better in the coming years. And at least I really, from the bottom of my heart, I say thank you very much for very good insight which is given. And this new technologies, which is really helping a lot in coming days, because earlier days, if you want to chat this kind of things in a very big platform, it was not there. But now, because of out of this pandemic,
AR VR, right?
yes, AR VR. Now we are bringing each one very much closer without any boundaries. So we can talk with a different time zone at the same platform, and then it is giving. So thank you very much for those things, because I could not stop myself saying thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Amit.
Thank you, Amit.
Yeah, and I wish that, and this is what is my strength, and I'm planning that right now I'm working, but I just want to contribute to the Indian organization in a way, so that at least we can bring very small scale companies to start thinking in this direction, because India's 50% GDP is coming from uninked or unorganized sector. And if those sectors are changing their status or their mindset or the level, then no one can stop India to grow much better than what they are. So we are underrated so far.
These are incredible words and sentiments, Amit. And you did a much better task of encapsulating just the right sentiment than me into your words. And I really am grateful to you for doing this. And my best wishes, our best wishes for your initiative, for your venture that you just spoke about.
Yeah. Thank
God
you.
bless
Thank
you, and let us know if we could be of any help from a media perspective.
Sure. So thank you all.
Bon voyage. Take care. And I'll put your question to the panelists. That was so well worded, Amit. So thank you for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. So Amit says in one sentence what I have been wanting to say all along, is that despite having all the big brains in India, why is it that we are still lagging? That's just one sentence question to end this discussion with. Let me start with Clemens.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, right, that we're all lagging behind China. It's everywhere the same, and I'm repeating myself a little bit, I'm afraid of, but if you have we have to invest in Africa, in Europe, and when he invests, they have to buy from us. And when and how can they buy from us? We need to have a production for this, and this goods. And in this area is this production, in this area is this production. It's a totally different speed, right? I mean, there are no regulations that keep them away from working. At the beginning, they didn't care for any environmental regulations. Now this is changing, for God's sake, because they realize that it also falls back to them. But if you are not in a democracy where everybody has the same rights, it's on the business side maybe sometimes easier. If this is overall good for the population, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, as Oliver said, right? When you say, okay, on this spot in our country, we put a production line, and besides we have a 10 million population city, which is working in the factories, and then we connect this with an airport and with a highway. It's a totally different situation, I guess, that you're having, right?
That's very candid. Thank you for that candid view. And it's really helpful. And you're so right. Oliver?
Yeah, I mean, this is, let's break it down to Indian manufacturing companies again. It's just like, use your advantages that you have and stop thinking of who can do that better or that country or whatnot. Think about it. You speak English, which is the global business language. You have online tools that work. You have, for example, a huge difference that India has is international bank transfers. International payments are quite simple to do with all other countries. I remember from my time to China, it was not easy to do international transfers. So that's why many countries go via Hong Kong bank, but many companies go via Hong Kong bank account, for example. And when you use now your time to say, okay, what I really want to do, okay, I want to attract European customers, then look critically on your website, use on your website, you're already, if you have already European customers, maybe you had one in the past, maybe you're still working one before the crisis, maybe. If you can't disclose because of confidentiality what you were doing, at least get a statement from a European client saying like, I have worked with company so-and-so and to my full outstanding satisfaction of service and product, something like that. Use that on the website, promote that, post it on your LinkedIn account to see there is a reference there. And European companies will get attracted to you as a company. They will see your brand, they will see your logo, they look at your website. And when they virtually want to visit you, or in a few months, hopefully, can physically visit you, make sure your building looks good and make sure your factory looks even nicer than it does now, and it's fully appeared, and it shows also already progress in regards to digital changes, be it with AR, what we spoke about, or be it just with the how it looks when you walk through. Does it look organized? Does it look like, yes, I can serve a European customer? And this is a critical question that I cannot answer, but that everyone from the attendees can answer for their own company.
Great. Now, just let's say one sentence from each of you, from one business person to another, from across continents, as to how one can deal with this crisis as an entrepreneur. Clemens? Sorry, Clemens.
I guess in general, crises are something positive, right? Because when everything goes always right, you're not innovative anymore. And I guess especially a crisis like this helps you to stop thinking about where I'm standing right now, where do I want to go to, do I really have a perfect fit for the market with what I'm doing? And it helps you a little bit, I guess, to resort and reshape your strategy, your resources. So I guess really taking also the time, what we've seen is that more customers have now time to talk to you, to attend to webinars, get their feedback, collected, think back, sit together with your management team, and then said, okay, based on the experience from the past, based on the feedback that we get right now, how can we get even stronger out of that crisis? So in general, I always try to see something positive. Otherwise, I guess as an entrepreneur, you have an issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oliver, one sentence.
Crisis and chance have both 6 letters, both start with C. Just exchange 5 letters and you're there.
Wow. Wow. That's powerful. So on that note, let's end the session. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us from your country. Our best wishes to you and your economy for turning back to normalcy. And thank you on behalf of all the attendees and the organizers. Have a brilliant day, gentlemen.
Thank you so much for the invite.
Thanks everyone else for attending.
Thank you
for the great questions. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Greetings from Austria.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.